Here we go again, out of our minds and out of yelling at things and trying to create situations where there are none. The Metroid Dread is a sacred cow with bad design, says God of War creator. David Jaffe's frustrations with Metroid Dread have triggered a larger debate over the difficulty and design of recent games. Every would-be whatever, every talking head or developer turned talking head wants to crack open the game difficulty debate, and they always wind up coming up with the same bullshit excuses as to why things need to be changed. You know what? I don't see you taking the time and actually putting out something that would fix these problems. Last time it was Psychonauts, and to be honest, other than like just a couple of people talking about how great Psychonauts 2 is, I haven't heard shit. Like it hasn't been, to me, it hasn't been burning down like the industry like people thought it would. And I kind of figured that was the case because the first was a sleeper hit. It was good for whatever reason. And then this one came out and it's like, man, whatever. It's a Psychonauts game. It's whatever. I'm not saying it's bad because I enjoyed the first Psychonauts game. It's just, it's not burning down the charts or anything like that. So, and then you had the TikTok girl, which that was a easy argument because all you had to do is just basically turn her words against her, and you found out that, like, yeah, these are bad arguments. And now we're here with this because we have to, absolutely have to create arguments where there are none. So, after struggling to solve one of Metroid Dread's earliest puzzles, the God of War and Twisted Metal director David Jaffe proceeded to go on an epic multi-front rant in which he referred to Metroid Dread as a sacred cow with shit design and criticized modern developers for trying to make games too hard. Now, keep in mind that Metroid Dread is not wholly a Nintendo product. It was a product of Mercury Steam, probably with assistance from Sakamoto. So, basically, any problems that you have with the game is not really Nintendo's fault, it's Mercury Steam's fault. But at the same time, I'm sure it's something that's like entirely different than what he was expecting to be a problem. I noticed that a lot of people, especially on the western side, seem to make mountains out of fucking molehills. So let's actually find out. Because I still haven't played Metroid Dread yet. I've heard good things from people that have played it, and people really enjoy the game for what it is. So let's see why a popular thing is a problem for old man gamer. During a Metroid Dread stream, Jaffe encountered an early game roadblock that he couldn't quite figure out. Shortly thereafter, someone in the chat seems to have told him that he needs to shoot the ceiling in order to access the area above. Jaffe did just that, acted mildly frustrated with the game, and seemingly proceeded with the rest of his life, as so many of us would. See, my problem with that is, okay, I haven't played Metroid Dread, so I haven't actually came across that roadblock. But here's the thing. I have played just about every Metroid game. Pretty sure I played every Metroid game up to this point. No, that's not true. I haven't played it. I own Prime 2 and 3, but I've not played Prime 3. I think that's the only Metroid game I have not played. But going off of the understanding of 2D Metroid and having been a person, a child that had played through the original Metroid so much that when I borrowed it from my cousin, I got to pretty much the end of the game. Had to give the game back to my cousin. Got the game for Christmas and beat the game Christmas Day, thus pissing off my mother to the point of where she said she's no longer buying me any Nintendo games because I beat the game too damn fast. Like that's the level that I was on. And I am constantly trying to get back to that level because I feel like me as a kid was a fucking beast when it came to video games. And now I'm just kind of stumbling my way through. It's a bone of contention. It really irritates the shit out of me. It really pisses me off when I can think back to like, damn, I'm used to murk games in like 2 days or less. I used to straight up murk games like in 2 days or less. I could beat. I had it down to where I could beat Battletoads in 30 minutes. It was to a fucking science. I had it. I went back and played Battletoads. And I'm like, why am I struggling? I mean, I'm struggling on the parts that you have to struggle on, and when you get to the Klingelringer, it's just kind of like you're pretty much running on the flip of a coin with that damn thing. Like, no matter how good my precision is, I had to be on a really good day where I can actually pull it off. Used to be able to consistently like pull off the Klingelringer thing, but it just didn't. I got to that point and was just struggling. But I made it to that stage, so I mean, I still got it. But so yeah. However, shortly thereafter, Jaffe decided to upload a video in which he reacted to his own live stream by suggesting that the problems wasn't that he couldn't solve the puzzle, but that the puzzle itself and more of Metroid Dread represents Bush League design that should not get a pass. You really should see it for yourself to appreciate his passion on the matter. Bush League design that shouldn't get a pass. In every Metroid game, you come to a point where you don't know where you're going. The whole point of the game is exploration. If you don't know, if you come across a dead end, it's never a dead end. Like, you shoot a wall, turn into a ball and go through the hole in the wall to go to the next area. You shoot up and go up to go to the next area. You shoot down and go down to go to the next area. This has been a designed setup. This has existed since Metroid 1. This shit sounds like pilot error, my dude. Like, seriously, this is fucking pilot error. If you don't know Metroid, I don't want to do the clapping emoji. If you don't understand Metroid, if you didn't play Metroid from the beginning and you don't understand that anywhere could basically be a point that leads you to the next part of this area, if you don't necessarily grasp that concept, go play the first game, figure that part out, and then just apply all that shit to another. It's not Bush League design if it's been a staple of the series and other series that spawned from this series. That's not Bush League design. Metroidvanias, Castlevania games, like other games have come from this design. It's been a staple of every fucking part of the genre that has existed since its implementation. It's just, now you're just getting pissed to get pissed, and you sound like a child. You sound like a petulant child when you say shit like that. And I know bad game design. I fucking played through Journey from Darkness, Strider Returns, so I can tell you about bad game design. But that's not bad game design. That's not Bush League game design. You want to talk about some real Bush League game design? Jesus Christ! Journey from Darkness, Strider Returns is full of it. It's full of it. It's terrible. But for some reason, I played through some real stinkers, just because I wanted the challenge. I wanted to be able to say I've beaten those games. And I guess I'm a masochist. Anyways, although it feels like Jaffe really airs it all out in that video, the rant surprisingly didn't end there. In fact, Jaffe took his feelings to Twitter, where he suggested that the modern developers are too obsessed with making difficult games that he believes alienates players. I gotta say it. Nigga, please. Kena, Metroid, Returnal, all leading the march towards super challenging games. Maybe it's an NES generation coming into their own as designers, but I fucking hate this shit. And it's not an age thing. Nigga, please. Never liked it, but it's so rampant. It's like devs want to push players away. Those who want challenges will seek challenges, and those who seek challenges will get those challenges. Those who don't want those challenges can go to other games and enjoy those games. That's the way things are. That's the way they always been, and that's the way it will always be. The guy that directs God of War Well, God of War is not really much of a challenging game. Unless you count the QuickTime events. And that's me actually liking God of War 1 and 2. I actually really enjoy God of War 1 and 2. But I can say, thinking back to those games, because I played God of War 1 and 2 back to back, and I beat them in the same week. There's a lot of the most difficult aspect of God of War 1, if I remember correctly, was climbing up that one area. And I might be blending my games together, but it's that one area where you're climbing up and the saw blade things come out and hit you, keep knocking you back down. That's more frustration. That's some Atari level Bush League design. Let's talk about that for a second. That's an irritating thing. Now, there's some good aspects in God of War's design, but that was not one of them. It just felt like you're just basically creating a artificial difficulty to keep people from actually getting through that area as quickly as possible. The lady does protest too much though, but that's certainly a topic worth discussing. But before we get there, it's important to point out the crux of Jaffe's argument is that this section of the game represents bad video game design because he believes it's unintuitive. He seems to be saying that there needed to be a clearer indication of what you were supposed to do, rather than by simply hoping that you'll eventually try to shoot your way through a hidden block. To be very fair, shooting your way through hidden blocks is a particularly divisive NES era trope featured prominently in some of the most frustrating retro games ever made. But the problem with that is, it is one of the things that is a staple of retro gaming. You can't say that's Bush League game design if games like Axiom Verge utilizes the same mechanic. Games like Symphony of the Night utilize the same mechanic. Games like fucking Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth utilizes the same mechanic. They all do it to a point of where it is something that's there. They're all done in interesting ways. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you don't like it, that's fine, but I wouldn't say it's a Bush League idea. However, it's to be said that a particular puzzle isn't necessarily an example of design tropes. In fact, there's a tutorial screen early on in the game that mentions that some destructible blocks are hidden, and if you run into a dead end, try shooting at your surroundings. Furthermore, this is a clear passage above the blocks, and there are enemies around the blocks that seem to be subtly informing you that these blocks are destructible. See, that's the difference between bad design and good design, because there are certain elements that are there that lead you to actually try attacking that certain area. You blast those enemies and accidentally, quote unquote, discover that there's a new pathway there. Now, good design, and this is just from going off of not just my days as a graphic designer, but looking at most of the Super Mario Maker stages and making Super Mario Maker stages. You have to find ways to lure players into handling certain things. Now, my time with making stages through Mario Maker is there's a lot of and it kind of gives you a lot of insight into the original design for Super Mario Brothers. There's two paths in the game. Well, originally there's two paths. You can make multiple paths. You can make a easy path, a hard path, and a medium path in the game in just one stage or area. And you can the easy path would be to jump in this tube, go to the other side of the stage, go to the goal. That's actually in 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers. So the medium path would be to, when you get to the middle of 1-1, where there's a line of blocks at the very middle to the top of the stage, you can hop on those blocks to get past all the obstacles and actually get to the ending that way. Now, the hard path will be to take the ground path completely all the way through. And that design is actually pretty brilliant, because it's okay, I beat 1-1. I'm actually sitting down and watching my daughter play through World 1-1 on Super Mario Brothers, kind of giving me a lot more insight in that too, because it's yeah, she's getting through 1-1. She's a 3-year-old. She's getting through 1-1 pretty easily. She'll take the tube and she'll go out the other end, and she beat one that way. She's going through and actually taking the ground path, which is the more difficult one because there's more enemies on the field. She's going through that pretty well, and she's even like jumping up and going over the blocks to go the other way. So I mean, as she goes, she is kind of learning, and she's also building on those things. Okay, I can beat it this way. I'm gonna try to beat it this way. Oh, I'm beating it this way. I try to beat it this way. That's good. That's how good design works. You're trying to get the user to basically take on different challenges at different skill sets in order to completely master that first area. And the first area gives you a general idea of what to expect in the rest of the game. Now there's some change ups to the formula over time, but it's still one of those things where it's you're getting a handle on the controls, you're getting a handle on the power-ups, you're understanding the enemy types until the enemy types switch up and you get the busy beezles instead of the Goombas. But at the same time, you're taking that knowledge and you're applying it properly, which is the goal of beating a game. Or this is the goal of like understanding the information that's supposed to be given to you in an intuitive way. Now, maybe leaving a sign stating that there's certain areas that can be shot, that might not be as intuitive as people would like, but people don't follow directions or understand like how these games work, and it's been a long period of time. For somebody that's coming into a Metroid for the first time, you're not going to gather that, yeah, I need to shoot at walls, I need to shoot at the floor, I need to shoot at the ceiling. Nobody's going to grasp that. So you kind of do need something to give people an idea of like, okay, this is how the game's going to go. I need to search everything in order to continue on or whatever. Despite the fact that maybe you've played other Metroidvanias and you kind of have a gist of like how it goes. Going back to Metroid, it's almost an entirely different. It's similar it's better for those that actually originally played through the game, and for a lot of new people, it might not be as good. So yeah, this is all confusing to me as somebody who has been a game director and has been in the industry, and you're having problems grasping some of the more finer details of like retro games. It just confuses the hell out of me to hear that. But yeah. So there's a tutorial screen earlier on in the game that means that there's some destructible blocks hidden that if you run into a dead end or try shooting the surroundings. Furthermore, this is a clear passage above the blocks, and there are enemies around the blocks that are subtly informing you that the blocks are destructible. The point is that the game encourages you both directly and indirectly to try shooting blocks when there is no other clear path forward. In fact, fans tried pointing that out to Jaffe on Twitter and elsewhere. Well, that's when things started to get a bit more heated. To emphasize my point, here's the screenshot. And damn it, there is a notation right there that tells you exactly what you need to do in order to get through that or whatever. First 10 minutes of gameplay, not including the intro, immediately after the missile block tutorial, it spells it out for you plain as day. Jaffe responds with, "I am super aware of this screen. It doesn't, however, solve the issue." They explain this at the start of the game, dude. Nintendonomics. This is all true, but there's also a divide in you resorting to claiming bad game design when in reality you are playing the game badly. We're back to Cuphead now. It's bad game design when you hide a critical path using techniques that commonly are only used to hide secret areas. It's also a bad game design when there are ways for the breadcrumbs that you left for players to find the path to vanish, thus leaving the player with no info. I think you got proven wrong, and instead of actually admitting that you were wrong, you were doubling down on this like a champ, like a true champion. You're going to continue to double down on this to your dying fucking breath. You're a madman. This generation divide is a real thing. It's hard to have real discussions with people who think getting ratioed matters and who think unsubbing them from a YouTube channel is some form of meaningful protest. I want an internet for people 35 and over, please, but not Facebook. I'm gonna say it. Sir, you have become the thing you hate the most. You're a boomer. You're a real boomer. I'm a Gen Xer and I get to call you a boomer. That's fucking hilarious. Now, it's obvious that Jaffe is feeling frustrated that he's turned that frustration into a bit of a yelling at clouds moment. It happens from time to time, and there's usually a point during these moments where you need to step back and really examine the scope of what you're so passionate about. Having said that, and with due respect to Jaffe, I have to agree with the fans who suggested that this is not an example of the kind of bad game design that Jaffe seems to be referencing. Not only does Metroid Dread straight up tell you that things like this are going to happen at some point, but the game does a pretty great job of pointing you in the right direction in this specific instance without straight up grabbing you by the hand and showing you what to do. It's honestly a pretty brilliant example of the kind of innovative and clever design that does indeed make Metroid a pretty sacred franchise in the minds of many. That's a good point. The whole point of game design is for you to impart information from the designer and the developers to the player in a way that's not a hand-holding way. The biggest problem that happened in the turn of the millennium was that we had too many games that held people's hands and treated them like they're fucking idiots. And it turned off a lot of people, including yours truly. So that kind of got to the point where I was getting tired of these hyper tutorial filled easy kid games. And I guess I wasn't alone, because a lot of people kind of like almost jumped out to go do other things until games like Dark Souls happen, and that's when people realize that, oh, difficulty actually does matter in games. Difficulty is interesting in games. And people wanted more of that, so they got more of that. And then we started to see a whole shift in the culture again. Or shift in the industry and a shift in culture. Because people want to be challenged. If you don't challenge somebody, if you don't take up challenges and at least attempt to challenge, your brain stagnates. And then you get bored because you feel like there's nothing that's really on the level of what you would perceive to be a challenge. The problem is people like Jaffe want things to be like the early 2000s again. And it's just not going to happen. It's too much of a culture shift, and people forgot how good it was to have a challenge until they actually got the challenge was presented to them. They're not going back. They're not going to go back to those types of games anymore. Now, there is a point to be made that difficult games can exist alongside games with easier challenges. There also exists a point where you can probably put in invincibility codes as cheat codes, or like and be perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that. Cheat codes like, say, infinite lives or whatever, it doesn't take the difficulty out of the game. It just gives you more opportunities to play the game. I don't have a problem with that at all. So, as for the idea that we're heading towards an era of game design led by gamers who grew up during the NES generation, which is more games will be more challenging, well, maybe we are. However, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that it's inherently a bad thing. Not only am I personally a fan of challenging video games, we celebrated them quite often on this site, but given the tremendous progress that we have seen in recent years in terms of video game accessibility and design diversity, I'd say that we're actually closer to an overall difficulty balance in the industry than we've seen before. That's an interesting take. Developers are finding ways to make challenging experiences more accessible and intuitive, which is really exciting thing to see. I've never thought of it that way. That's an interesting idea. Regardless, perhaps it's best to say that there is value in contextualizing your personal frustrations and realizing when they are personal versus when you can apply them to broader arguments. As for whether Metroid Dread has serious design problems, or whether or not too many modern games are alienating players with their difficulty, especially by embracing more Metroidvania design elements, We leave it up to you to debate that in the comments below. Now, that's the end of the argument. It's a really good point, Matthew Bird. You really made a good point here. I respect that. And I like the fact that it wasn't one of those situations where people tried to throw the accessibility bone or the accessibility monkey wrench into the argument in order to muddle the points that are being made. Accessibility is a separate situation from the difficulty debate, because difficulty is what we're really talking about here. Accessibility, it exists. It can run parallel to this discussion, but it cannot take over this discussion. And it's often used as a means of muddling the discussion in order to try to win the argument of why we need to lower the difficulty of games, which is a ridiculous statement. To me, it seems as if this is the only way people like Jaffe and people like Schaefer and all these other people can win this argument. If it is even like called winning. I don't think it's winning personally. I think it's a cop-out, if anything. I think the thing is like intuitive game design or good game design or a means of I guess, yeah, good game design. We'll go with that. Good game design is a means of communicating without being blatantly obvious about it. What a player needs to do in order to meet the requirements desired to beat the game. And I think that's the argument. And this isn't the case of that. This is clearly the developer has gone out of their way to try to give the player every indication of what they would need to do in order to get further in the game. And to me, this is the first Goomba test. If you can't get past the first Goomba in Super Mario Brothers, you need to try harder. And I think Jaffe didn't pass the Goomba test. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you for joining me for this. I'll see you next boss fight. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.